What up, Wizards? It's Deb from The Place, bringing you some more Spider-Man previews while wearing the same shirt I was wearing yesterday. But at least these aren't the same previews as yesterday, and I also really like this shirt, I'll have you know. But one way or the other, I thought this was going to be another light day. You know, I came in here thinking, we got like 17, 18 cards. And then as I closed my office door, Weekly MTG uploaded a buttload of more cards, like 20 more cards to look at. So there is so much to look at today. The last thing I want to do is waste your time. So let's go ahead and get into the commons. Now, not only were there a bunch more of these commons and uncommons than we've been getting in spoiler season so far, but you're also going to have to suffer through some of the most not Magic the Gathering cards you've ever seen for the first few entries. But don't worry, it'll pay off in good cards later, I promise. But for now, we got to look at Professional Wrestler and Bagel and Schmear, both of which are cards I don't really think I mind existing. Especially Professional Wrestler. You guys know how I feel about that subject. 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 4/4 Human Warrior Performer. Nice. When it enters, you get a treasure token, and it can't be blocked by more than one creature. Pretty hilarious that it has the opposite of Menace. It couldn't be menacing if he tried, but if you do give him Menace, I guess he's unblockable. That's cool. So a 4 mana 4/4 that creates a treasure token and has extra text on it. I won't be making your standard deck anytime soon, I don't think, but it's still a pretty good guy, especially for limited. But this is about as close as we'll ever get to that WWE Universes Beyond I've talked about in the past, so I guess I'll take it. I can't hate that it exists too much. And Bagel and Schmear, this also exists. I don't know how I feel about the trend lately of having to put like a modern day food item in every single set. Again, my own jury in my head is out about this, but the card is kind of neat. It's 1 mana for a food artifact. You can share it if you want to. You can pay a white mana, tap it, and sack it to put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature, then draw a card, only at sorcery speed. Or you can nosh. If you want to, you have the whole thing to yourself, and then it's just a food token that you draw a card off of. Usual, pay 2 mana, tap it, sack it. You gain 3, but in this case, again, you draw the card. So, not too shabby. I like drawing cards off of my foods. That's not bad. And sometimes I like getting +1/+1 counters. Pretty lame that you can only do it as a sorcery. I don't know why that is, but sure, whatever. At least it's got an extra mode on it, and it's only 1 mana to get on the table in the first place. So, get it on the table. It's food. This is, probably not too amazing though, but I gotta say, between this and instant ramen and nutrient block, I kind of, part of me likes it, and then part of me doesn't. You see, I've got 2 wolves inside of me, I guess is the idea, but both of them are kind of hungry for a bagel now. But let's move on to some means of conveyance there in the city. We got to see Passenger Ferry and Subway Train. These are both Magic cards. Passenger Ferry is 3 mana for a 4/3 artifact vehicle that crews for 2. And whenever it attacks, you can pay a blue mana. If you do, another target attacking creature cannot be blocked this turn. Another creature, it can't target itself. So they can block the multi-ton ferry that's moving at like 30 miles an hour. That's not a problem for them to put a couple of hands in front of or something. But the guy on the ferry, no, can't block him. It's just a little bit silly, but I get the flavor here. And I don't mind it in limited either. I think that, an extra blue mana is not too much to ask for getting a guy unblockable, perhaps over multiple turns. Not too bad. Subway Train is 2 mana for a 3/1 artifact vehicle that also crews for 2. And when it enters, you may pay a green mana. If you do, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle up. So for 3 mana, you get a 3/1 that gets a land, which is kind of okay. It's like Civic Wayfinder levels in limited there. And again, this is a limited card and nothing standard playable so far, but I guess that both of these cards on screen right now are fine in that format. Not too bad. I also like the inference here that to crew a passenger ferry, to crew that, or to drive like a subway train, to be the conductor or whatever, you have to have 2 power. And I would assume most humans don't actually have 2 power unless they're like trained fighters or soldiers or warriors or something like that. But in this case, and I mean like real humans in the real world, you're not a legendary creature, so you probably don't have 5 power. But in any case, I think a lot of like normal human beings are like the guy from the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, where he scouts the farmer and he's got like a 5 power level. I think that's most of us walking around. So I don't know that most of us can crew a subway train or a passenger ferry. I really spent too long on that talking point, but I thought it was cute. We'll move on to another. If you want to ride, here's a news helicopter. But there's also, in case you thought all this transportation was a little too much for a Magic card, we also have a hot dog cart to look at. There's a Magic card called Hot Dog Card now, and it depicts a hot dog cart. Let's look at news helicopter first. This is 3 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature construct with flying. When it enters, you get a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. So I guess if it crewed, it's not a vehicle, it doesn't crew, but if it crewed, I guess this guy could crew it. So if you're a 1/1, if you're like a normal person, you can fly a news helicopter, but you cannot drive a subway train. There's rules somewhere involved in this, like implicit rules. I just know it. News helicopter's fine and limited, probably. I guess. Hot dog card, on the other hand, is actually kind of snazzy. This is just a mana rock, it turns out. 3 mana for an artifact. When it enters, you get a food token, and you can tap it for a mana of any color. You can tap the hot dog card for a mana of any color. What's the flavor? I'm not talking about of the hot dogs. I like cheddar wurst. That's good stuff, but I can't have it anymore. I can't eat that stuff. But one way or the other. So it makes mana. Why? Maybe if it tapped for like a treasure token because they're paying you, right? Then I could maybe see that. But I don't. Hot dog card. Just anything taps for mana now. You tap a hot dog for mana. You tap your pork chop for mana. I don't know what's happening. I really don't in Magic the Gathering. But anyway, it's made of metal. Can it tap for mana? Is that what's happening? Like rocks tap for mana? Is this just a rock? If you see me turning my hot dog card sideways and be like, what are you doing? I'm just trying to get mana out of it, dog. This is a Magic card called Hot Dog card. I think that's what we got to take away from this. But I swear there are honest to God good commons today that actually make sense. Like Gallant Citizen over here. I mean, he's an astronaut. That's a little weird. We're talking about Magic. But still, Gallant Citizen, that could be reprinted in another set. And it could just be like some druid or something. But anyway, besides that, there's also Pumpkin Bombardment, which is also a fine Magic card. But Gallant Citizen is actually pretty simple. This is 2 Selesnya hybrids for a 1/1 human citizen. When it enters, draw a card. So you're a Helpful Hunter, whatever the cat's name is, and like Elvish Visionary, or you're, the dog that's also an enchantment, whatever. We've gotten a bunch of these 2-mana guys to draw a card when they enter the battlefield at this point, but I guess it's always nice to have another one, and you can't put it past seeing standard play if in just the right deck. I don't think it's going to happen this time around, to be honest with you, but at the same time, this is always like a welcome card to have access to, and cards like this have been decent in the past. But Pumpkin Bombardment over here is also pretty good. It's also cool. I like the art on it. I like jack-o'-lanterns as a general rule, but this is just a single mana, and you can pay either black or red for it, a Rakdos hybrid. I think that's actually one of the biggest strengths of this card, is that you can just pay a black mana for it. That's nice. It's a sorcery, and as an additional cost to cast it, you have to either discard a card or pay 2 mana. Pumpkin Bombardment deals 3 damage to target creatures. In mono black decks, I think that you could probably just play Bitter Triumph, but this does cost half of what Bitter Triumph costs. And in a way, you might play it alongside Bitter Triumph in a Reanimator deck that's just trying to discard big men. Now you have like 2 different removal spells that discard big guys, so you don't have to mess around with discard spells that kind of suck. There's also the fact that Mayhem is in this set, a kind of a take on Madness. If you've discarded the card this turn and it has Mayhem, you can play it out of your graveyard. And this works really well with all of those because it only costs 1 mana for a discard outlet that also, affects their board state. Even if you don't have a card you want to discard, you can just pay extra mana for it, which isn't true of like Bitter Triumph. The sorcery speed is kind of a downer, but Strangle was sorcery speed, and we played the heck out of that, and black decks couldn't play Strangle, so there's that. I think that black decks, again, probably have stuff they'd rather play, like Tragic Trajectory in the 1-drop slot, but I don't know, man. There's a lot of really good stuff about this. It's cheap, it's easy to cast, it lets you discard a card, I guess is a way to put that. There's definitely upside to it in this format, so it's a pretty decent removal spell, I'll say. But we'll finish the commons with a couple of lands here. We got to see Vibrant Cityscape and Ominous Asylum. Now, Vibrant Cityscape is just Evolving Wilds, but I guess it's noteworthy that it's like the 4th or 5th Evolving Wilds. Terramorphic Expanse, and now there's Escape Tunnel as well, so that's what we're up to 4 now. And then I guess like Fabled Passage is an honorary one. That's at least 5. There's another fetch land that does it, that isn't like one of the old school dual land fetch lands. But yeah, we just have a million of these at this point, and it's kind of crazy that we have that many. Like maybe Landfall decks in Brawl wanted another one. Maybe that's what it does. I'm not sure, but if you wanted, a city version of Terramorphic Expanse, I guess now you've got it. But Ominous Asylum is a land that enters tapped. It taps for Rakdos, either black or red, or you can pay 4, tap it, and surveil 1. Probably not worth it a lot of the time, but as far as common dual lands go, this is really not terrible. Now, I said we were going to finish up the commons with the lands, but there is one more common to look at. I just feel like it has the strength and power level of an uncommon. This is Skyward Spider here. This is 2 Azorius hybrids, so either double white, double blue, or a white and a blue. For a 2/2 spider human hero with ward 2, and it has flying, as long as it's modified in some way. So equipment, R's you control, +1/+1 counters, and other counters and stuff. It's all modifications. Now, this actually looks like it's pretty playable in like the blue-white enchantments deck, you know. Right now in standard, we don't have a whole lot of good creatures that have ward for a very low cost. What do we got? Like Toadstool Admirer and Armored Armadillo. You gonna play those cards? I mean, you can't. I just played Armored Armadillo for one of the $5 decks. I didn't absolutely hate it, but you know, it's Armored Armadillo. So are you really going to play those cards if you don't have to? Well, Skyward Spider is actually on color. You don't have to like go Bant for Toadstool Admirer, which is bad. You're adding a color for a bad card if you do that. But Skyward Spider is on color, and you can actually plunk it down on turn 2, and there is a fairly good chance that it'll survive until your next turn. And if they do have, Torch the Tower or Tragic Trajectory or something for it, then they're going to have to spend their entire turn 3 playing that spell, which is a pretty decent trade-off. So I think this is actually a fairly playable card. I'm not sure if it revitalizes Azorius enchantments, especially considering it isn't an enchantment. You want to go Optimistic Scavenger into this on turn 2 and get no value off your Scavenger and tap all your mana down. You probably don't. So even in the deck, it looks like it goes in. There are some problems, but that deck has been looking for a strong 2-drop or even 1-drop creature it can throw enchantments on, and this is probably one of its best options in all of the format. I don't know why I had to be so dramatic, but I mean, it is. Let's calm it down just a little bit so we can start the uncommons here. We got to look at Prison Break and Chameleon, Master of Disguise here. Now, Prison Break is a pretty normal reanimator spell. 4 and a black, 5 total mana for a sorcery. Return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, but you can mayhem this for 3 and a black. So if you discard it, you can zombify. So is this better than I think it is? Is it just better zombify a lot of the time because you're going to be discarding cards in the turn you reanimate something anyway? So if you can discard a large creature and this, in the same turn, then just reanimate the big guy with this for only 4 mana. And unlike Zombify, you get an extra +1/+1 counter. So I might be thinking this is just normal beginning of the day uncommon stuff, but I don't know. Maybe it might be playable. I just think most of the time you're going to avoid the hassle and just play Zombify instead. A Chameleon Master Disguise is a cool little clone. I mean, it's kind of like the other card we just looked at, Prison Break. It's like, I like a reanimator spell, but it's pretty normal. It's just kind of a normal clone at the end of the day. 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 2/3 legendary human shapeshifter villain. You may have Chameleon enter as a copy of a creature you control, except his name is Chameleon, Master of Disguise, and he has Mayhem 2 and a blue. So probably the biggest upside about this is that it can copy legendary creatures because they won't have the same name. And that is kind of a big deal. And it's also on flavor. I like that about it. Matter of fact, the more I look at it, the more I think I should have moved it up a spot or two because it's effectively Spark Double in some ways. And it's like the second Spark Double variant that we've seen in this set. I guess Wizards decided people really like that card, so let's print 2 of them in the same set. I don't know if that's the best idea, but still, again, this can copy your commander, and that might be a huge deal, but I don't think it's really going too many places in Standard. Hope I'm wrong, though. It's a nice card. But next, we'll look at Terrific Team Up. Ironically, I didn't have another card I wanted to put on screen during this. I swear, that wasn't a planned joke. It just kind of happened that way. Team Up is 4 mana, 3 and a green for an instant. The spell costs 2 less to cast if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. 1 or 2 target creatures you control each get +1/+0 until end of turn. They each deal damage equal to their power to target creature an opponent controls. So if you have a large guy, this only costs a couple of mana at instant speed. Not so bad, but you have to have a couple of dudes out, which you don't always have. Your opponent can blow this out by just like taking out one of the guys some of the time, but at least it's, not a fight effect. It's a bite effect. I kind of like that about it, but I don't think it's any better than most of the bite effects that we have in Standard right now, and a lot of those don't really see play. So let's keep it pushing. We got to look at Spider-Mobile and another Craven. We got Craven Proud Predator. That's a terrible name for a card. Spider-Mobile is 3 mana for a 3/3 vehicle artifact that crews for 2, if you're noticing a theme there. It has Trample, and whenever it attacks or blocks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each spider You control. Okay, so this goes directly in the Spider decks and Commander, if nothing else. I think that it probably deserves a slot in your Ishkana deck or your Shelob deck or whatever it's called. I think that this is okay there at the very least. And if you're making a Spider deck in Standard, I at least want to give it tryouts. Not sure that it makes the final cut, but, just a couple of Spiders. This thing is suddenly a 5/5 trample, which is just not an awful deal, I'd say. And it accrues for relatively cheap, so I'll take it some of the time. Craven Proud Predator. I don't even like saying it. Call Chris Hansen over here. This is 3 mana, 1, a red, and a green for a star 4 legendary human warrior villain with vigilance. It has top of the food chain. Its power is equal to the greatest mana value among permanents that you control. Both of the cards that we've seen that care about mana value here in the last, both terrific team up in this. I like that they care about permanents you control and not specifically creatures. I think that's a nice wrinkle, but still, you got a really big thing out. Suddenly this is like a 7/4. Okay. I guess for 3 mana, that's kind of fine, but it's never going to be more than just like a large dude with vigilance. And those can be okay, especially for the right cost. I'm just not certain that there aren't literally 12 better cards off the top of my head you could play in your Gruul aggro or mid-range deck at 3 mana, are you going to play this? Are you going to play Screaming Nemesis? I have my ideas of which one I'm going to pick, So, again, cool limited card here, but probably not too much else. Here's another guy kind of hanging out by himself here. Doesn't have a partner, but I like it. This is Wraith Vicious Vigilante. 3 mana, 1, a white, and a blue for a 1/1 legendary human detective hero with double strike. It also has Fear Gas. Wraith cannot be blocked. So, first of all, detective for those Murders at Karlov Manor decks with all the detectives in them, right? We're all into that. But still, a double strike guy that can't be blocked, down. 100% down for the rest of my life. This is actually really, really cool, man. At least it's going to hit for 2 mana. It's kind of a Windrake when you think about it. 3 mana, 2/2 flying. It is the best Windrake in limited. If you just throw any aura onto it, it starts getting crazy. So I like this. Sadly, I don't really think that it's standard playable. That's crazy because the last couple of cards we've looked at, like Craven and now this, both of these would have been super amazing cards in 1999. I feel like if they existed, there would be cards that we still held very near and dear to our hearts. I'd give honorary 5s to them during 10 cards rated. We'd be happy that they existed. But honestly, in 2025, these are just kind of mediocre looking cards, but I still hold, again, some love in my heart for stuff like this. Double strike can't be blocked. Sign me up. Where's the clipboard? I will sign my name. But next, we got to look at Scarlet Spider, Kane, as well as Spider Ook. It's Spider UK. I just thought it'd be funny if I did that. Scarlet Spider Kane is 2 mana, Rakdos colors, black-red, for a 2/1 legendary spider human hero with menace. When it enters, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Scarlet Spider. Kane. You can also mayhem this for a Rakdos hybrid. So again, for either or black or a red. Yeah, you make your choice, cowboy. You can get potentially a 3/2. Not so bad. 3/2 out of your graveyard with menace for a single mana is a rate that I'm willing to pay. Now, I'm not sure that I'm going to get to pay it because I'm just not really sure what Rakdos aggro deck this really wants to go in, but I guess there's fairly aggressive ways to discard cards in Standard right now. And you can play Marauding Mako in your 1-drop slot and stuff, and then discard something on turn 2 and get Scarlet Spider Kane out and just start going crazy. I think that there's probably a deck here. I'm just not sure exactly what the list looks like, but this is a welcome addition. The card is not bad on rate alone, for sure, but Spider UK is a pretty interesting card too, man. 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/4 legendary spider human hero with web slinging for 2 and a white. At the beginning of your end step, if 2 or more creatures entered the battlefield under your control this turn, you draw a card and you gain 2 life. Well, hey, that's really not terrible, Think about Commander, I guess, which is a word I have not felt the need to say all day. I think he'll be proud of me. What are we, 20-something minutes in? And we're not even in the rares yet. We got to pick things up. But Spider UK almost feels like it could have been a rare, and I'm really glad they didn't make it one. Anyway, cool little card here. I really think that it is. A 3 mana some of the time, 3/4 that does this is pretty cool. If you play it on turn 3, it probably won't trigger during your end step, and you probably want it to trigger during your end step. So I imagine, maybe on turn 4, you can attack and then play Spider UK and then play a 1-drop, and now you draw a card, you gain 2 life. The life gain could be pretty decent in the right deck. You know, it triggers all kinds of effects in standard, but obviously the card draw is where it's at, man. Been giving white a lot of card draw lately, and this isn't a super strong piece or anything. There's a reason it's uncommon, but it's still a noteworthy piece, I think. It's not too bad. But the final two uncommons of today are Supportive Parents and Damage Control Crew. Now, Supportive Parents is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 3/3 human citizen. Tap 2 untapped creatures you control to add a mana of any color. So this isn't like amazing. I just needed a place to park it, and I will support Supportive Parents. You got to boost them top tier. Whether the card is top tier uncommon or not, the concept certainly is. Supportive Parents are important, but in any case, man, this can tap to its own ability, so you just have to find something else some other card to get married with and then have a child and then to fulfill the flavor of the card with. I support it. But Damage Control Crew is actually kind of a halfway decent Magic card. It's 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 3/3 human citizen. When it enters, choose one. Either repair, return target card with mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard to your hand, or impound, exile target artifact or enchantment. So those are good ETB triggers. You get it's not Eternal Witness. It's not. And it's also not like just Naturalize or something. It's not like Reclamation Sage or whatever. But could be seen as better. Exile. You get to pick both artifacts and enchantments. That's pretty good, actually. And sometimes you'll just return like one of the more important dudes in your deck to your hand, and that's not bad. You can also have a Damage Control Crew call in another Damage Control Crew, which then calls in another Damage Control Crew, and then finally exiles an artifact or enchantment. It could work that way. I think that, this doesn't necessarily replace Tranquil Throwback or anything, but it's a pretty okay Magic card, all things considered. Now, I told myself going into this recording that I would restrict myself in this video to one iteration, and only one iteration, of all things considered. I will not say it again in this video, by God. Now, the other good news, because I'm pretty sure that's good news, is that we're moving on to the rares here. And we're going to start with Scarlet Spider, Ben Riley. This is 3 mana, 1, a red and a green for a 4/3 legendary spider human hero with web slinging for a green and a red, which is 2 mana. It also has Trample. It also has Sensational Save. If Scarlet Spider was cast using web slinging, he enters with X +1/+1 counters on him, where X is the mana value of the returned creature. Okay, so even if you only return, say, Elan War Elves to your hand, that helped you get the mana to web sling it in the first place, But if you return Elan War Elves to your hand, you have a 2 mana, 5 power trample guy. Pretty good rares today. I guess I'll put it that way, This is much better than some of the cards we've seen so far today for a potential like Gruul aggro list. You may not want to web sling too much in those decks, but I imagine you're attacking anyway. Your creature's going to be tapped down. You can find a tap dude on the table. And it's not like Scarlet Spider has haste or anything, so it's fine to cast him during your second main phase. And maybe a lot of the creatures in your deck have haste anyway, so like you cast a 2-drop with haste and you swing with it, and then on turn 3 you can get Scarlet Spider down, and when you go to recast that 2-drop later in the game, you just attack with them immediately. That all seems okay, and obviously you've got your Screaming Nemesises and stuff like that in those decks, so plenty of haste creatures to kind of work with web slinging, because I do think those two abilities work nicely together. But one way or the other, man, this could end up being, a 7-power creature reasonably easily if you do return a Screaming Nemesis to your hand and then replay it next turn. Well, then, yeah, this is a 7-power trampler for just a 2 mana investment, which I think is the important thing. On turn 4, you can get down, on curve after your 3-drop, you can get down a 7-power trampler and also have mana up for a Braid or some other removal spell. That's important. So really, man, don't discount this card. This could be really good. But next we'll move on to a good commander, a card that I'm a little less excited about in standard, but it could still potentially do some work there. This is Aranya, Heart of the Spider. 3 mana, 1 red, white for a 3/3 legendary spider human hero. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So it's Luminarch Aspirant for 1 extra mana. 50% more mana. That is a lot to ask, just so you know. There's a mountain of difference between 2 and 3 mana. But the real difference here is that you get a larger body. That's one, I guess. But also you get card advantage. You get impulse drawing. off of your Luminarch Aspirant for your extra mana. And we've seen 3-mana Luminarch Aspirant effects see play, stuff like Fight Rigging, and this isn't going to get you a free card the way that card will, but at the same time, it will get you a fair amount of card advantage. If you have multiple modified creatures hitting for combat damage, first of all, congratulations, you're already winning the game, but you're really burying the opponent at this point. So again, I don't really put this past seeing some standard play if the correct Boros aggro deck exists, or one that cares about +1/+1 counters, but even, beyond that, I think that it's just a solid Magic card. Great in the 99 of a lot of Commander decks, but probably fun to build around too, so solid card. Now let's look at Spinneret and Spiderling over here. A single red mana for a 1/2 legendary Spider Human Hero. Stop me if you've heard that creature type 8 times in this video already. Whenever you attack with 2 or more spiders, put a +1/+1 counter on these ladies. Whenever Spinneret and Spiderling deal 4 or more damage, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. So this is the good impulse drawing. You do get until the end of your next turn. It's going to be tough for them to deal 4 or more damage unless you augment them pretty heavily. You have to attack with 2 or more spiders, which you're probably not doing until about turn 3, even if you played this on turn 1. Maybe a haste spider on 2 and get to it, you spider punk and use the riot to give it haste, then you swing with both these guys and it gets a +1/+1 counter. Actually, that's not bad. Swinging for 4 on turn 2. And then on for the next turn, it'll swing for more again. I don't know, man. It's not bad. Kind of talking myself into it, but at the same time, I don't think that it's going to deal 4 damage super often. But when it does, being able to draw cards off your 1-drop is great. So this could turn into like an incredible investment for only a single mana, but it really does require a lot of enabling to make that happen. And I'm not sure you can actually pull off all the enabling with all the cheap removal in standard right now. But next we'll move on to Parker Luck here. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, 2 target players each reveal the top card of their library. They each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. Then they each put the card they revealed into their hand. That is super cute because now you can play, a Dark Confidant effect in a deck that has Unholy Annex in it, because that's effectively an 8 mana card. You don't want to rip it off Dark Confidant, so you really don't see the 2 in the same deck very often. You could actually play these 2 cards in the same deck. Kind of like that. If you get an Unholy Annex, your opponent takes 8. That's nasty. This is going to be a stream card for absolute sure. But still, man, this is a neat design for a card. And we'll see if it's just like off the rails or just kind of fine, because I really don't know which way I'm leaning towards. But I don't think I'm leaning towards bad at all. It's got to be at least fine. But next, let's look at a rare land. Ooh, it's Oscorp Industries. This is a land that enters tapped. And when it enters from a graveyard, you lose 2 life. Well, why would it enter from a graveyard? Well, because it has Mayhem. And also there's a bunch of effects that let you play lands from graveyards, like, Crucible of Worlds and Ice Till Explorer, there's things. But either way, this thing taps for Grixis, taps for either a blue, a black, or a red. I think that having a land that you can Mayhem into play is kind of great in a lot of ways, but it freaking comes into play tapped. And you lose life too. I don't care that much about the shock, but it does mitigate it a little bit. Like, do you want to play this out of your graveyard 3 times in the same game? Probably not. Probably not. So again, a little self-mitigating. You can't combo it with something that like, oh, I'm going to deal some damage to you whenever a land comes into play. Like, you could try that, but is it really going to be worth it to take that much damage? I'm not sure. Is it going to be worth it to Splendid Reclamation this back into play with Aftermath Analyst or Lumra or something again multiple times in a game? I don't know. So the 2 life might actually be a serious problem before too many uses happen. But either way, this is good. I keep kind of sounding like I'm pooping on it, but a land that you can just play out of your graveyard as long as you discarded it is fantastic. And the fact that it produces 3 different colors is great too, obviously. Next is Rocket Powered Goblin Glider. That could have been a Magic card. I was going to say, like, this is a Magic card or whatever, like I've been saying all video, but honestly, Rocket Powered Goblin Glider could have easily been a Magic card 20 years ago. Anyway, this is 3 mana for an equipment. It's an artifact. It equips for 2, and when it enters, if it was cast from your graveyard, attach it to a creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has flying and haste, and you can Mayhem equip this for 2 mana, same as its normal equip cost. This is all right. If you can just skip paying the 3 mana for it altogether, I think it's actually a pretty good little Magic card. Not sure what it goes in, but it is worth noting that once it's on the table, it's just kind of on the table. So if you mayhem it into play in your deck that plays like Tersa Light Shatter and Marauding Mako and a bunch of other discard effects or whatever, then it's just on the table. And it doesn't matter if you draw a Marauding Mako later in the game and you got no other ways to discard cards. You still have a 3-power Flying Haste. You're right off the top of your library just with your Marauding Mako. And when it comes to your Tersa, you have a 5-power Flying Haste guy now for a pretty low cost, just a couple of mana to throw it on any creature that comes into play. I think it's actually a little bit better than it looks. When you think about everything that goes into what could possibly make this card good, I think it's all right. I was very close there. But next, we got to check out Interdimensional Web Watch. This is 4 mana for an artifact. When it enters, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you can play them cards. You can also tap this to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast spells from exile. So if you're impulse drawing, and this helps you do that, this impulse draws 2 cards. We've already looked at cards in this video that impulse draw stuff. There's a bunch of stuff in standard that impulse draws, but beyond that, there's warp. We just saw that in Edge of Eternity. There's other stuff. There's adventures and whatnot in this format too, and a couple of other ways that you can cast cards out of exile. So this might actually be really sick in exactly the right deck, because it just always taps for 2 mana to do basically anything you want to do in the deck. I like that about it, but I also like a 4-drop that just gives me 2 cards. It's kind of like a Hedron Archive that goes ahead and gives you the 2 cards without having to sacrifice it. That's not too shabby, man. I like a lot about this, like a surprising amount about this. I think it could be a little bit sleeperish because I haven't really seen too many people talking about it over the last 24 hours since it was first previewed. But I actually think that this might have a shot, seriously. I mean, you play it on like turn 4 or something, and then on the next turn you drop a land and it can help you cast a 7-drop if it hit a 7-drop. So, it helps you cast Ugin on the next turn or something, and then later in the game, Ugin goes and gets it. And it will exile cards from the top of your library, and you can play those until... I'm just saying, man, it's not bad. But we'll move on to Friendly Neighborhood here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for an aura that this time enchants a land. When this aura enters, create 3 1/1 green and white human citizen creature tokens. Okay. Enchanted land has 1 tap. Target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. So sorcery speed, again, kind of sucks, but if it was instant speed, it'd be like way, 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 way better. Like almost too much better. But, it's kind of tough for them to bust up lands. It's not like it can't be done, but it's a lot easier to land an aura and stick it on a land than just about anything else. So I like that about it. And it gives you 3 bodies. 3 bodies when it comes into play. This could be really good in like the... Burrowguard Mentor Regal Bunnycorn like rabbit deck, like on turn 3 you can play the thing that gives you 3 rabbits. On turn 4 you play Friendly Neighborhood and you get 3 more creatures, so your dudes get huge. And then if you actually get a turn 5 at that point, well, now you can just load up your Burrowguard Mentor. He has trample, and suddenly he's like a 20/20 trample guy. Like you could actually make this a real line. I really think you could. 4 mana for 3 guys is kind of an okay rate in and of itself. I don't know, man. I think this is actually a pretty cool little card that might be, first of all, commander playable. I don't think it's terrible there. Especially in like tokens builds where you're going really, really wide. But I think this has a ghost of a chance in standard if the right deck exists. But next, let's look at the Death of Gwen Stacy. 3 mana, 2 and a black for an enchantment that is a saga. On chapter 1, destroy target creature. Do you see? That's the Death of Gwen Stacy. On chapter 2, each player may discard a card. Each player who does not do that loses 3 life. On chapter 3, exile any number of target players' graveyards. So altogether, pretty decent value. Now, it is 3 mana at sorcery speed to blow up a creature, which is not necessarily a rate that you want, but making your opponent discard a card on the next turn, potentially at least, is a pretty good mode. Now, you also have to discard a card, which you might want to do. This is yet another removal spell that discards a card, so I guess we have 3 in standard, 2 in this video alone, but still, kind of a removal spell that lets you discard a card, and sometimes hits your opponent. One way or the other. They're either going to discard or lose 3 life. And then I guess the graveyard bit is pretty good gravy in standard right now, where this can do an awful lot. value-wise, that third chapter, if you ever get to it. But yeah, again, just a good value enchantment here. You know, you got to take your pick of 3 drops in black decks and standard because you really have a lot of premium options. But this could definitely make a lot of cuts, especially if you're on the more controlling side of mid-range. But next, let's look at one of them Commander Spider-Man. I mean, it's in the main set. You can play it in standard, but you probably won't. This is Cosmic Spider-Man. Costs Wooburg, 1 of each color, for a 5/5 legendary spider human hero with flying, first drag, trample, lifelink, and haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, other spiders you control gain all of his abilities as well. So like a mini little Acroma for spiders, I guess. Not too bad. Or like an Acroma. It's like an Acroma and an Acroma's memorial or monument. Like it's memorial. All at the same time, which is neat. You know, if you can actually throw this in play in standard, I think you're doing okay. You know, maybe it's even a halfway decent, you know, reanimation target, but I think I'd still rather hit Bahamut or Valgavoth or something like that. But again, man, flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, haste. That is one of the more delicious keyword soups that I've seen in a really long time. So I may be undervaluing this, and obviously if you want to build 5-color spiders in standard, have at it, Hoss. That's probably top of your curve in that deck, but I don't know if I would really recommend it. I don't know. We got Starting Town. We can maybe make it work. we got Cavern of Souls, right? We can do this. 5-color spiders is easy. But anyway, I'm still not sure that that's good. I still don't think that that's quite where you want to be in standard. Just a really, really fun commander. If you want to build a fun commander, go for it. But if you want a superior Spider-Man, let's look at Superior Spider-Man. 4 mana, 2, a blue, and a black for a 4/4 legendary spider human hero with Mind Swap. You may have Superior Spider-Man enter as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard, except his name is Superior Spider-Man, and he's a 4/4 spider human hero in addition to his other types. When you do, exile that card. So if you get the thing out of your opponent's graveyard, which you can do, it's a graveyard, then you also get the added bonus of exiling the thing that you hit, which might be important for reasons. It's also cool that you can hit legends with this. So if you already, say, have a legend out, and there's another copy of that legend in your yard, you can Superior Spider-Man, hit the legend in your yard, and effectively have 2 copies of the same legend in play, which I do think is pretty powerful. We've already discussed that. I think that they're really leaning into being able to do that in this set. Now, this is another one where I do kind of feel like I have to say that you probably just play Zombify like 9 times out of 10, you know? But that 10th time, it's going to be a lot of fun to play this. Let's move on to Lady Octopus Inspired Inventor. This is a single blue mana for a 0/2 legendary human scientist villain. Whenever you draw your first or second card each turn, put an ingenuity counter on Lady O. You can tap her and cast an artifact spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the number of ingenuity counters on Lady Octopus without paying its mana cost. Nasty. That was a real burp, by the way. I apologize. But Lady Octopus is also nasty. I meant to call the card nasty. Anyway, yeah, this is actually pretty cool, man. On your turn 2, it'll immediately get an ingenuity counter. And then if you do anything to draw a card, it gets a second ingenuity counter. Now, on turn 2, you can just drop a free 2-mana artifact and do whatever else you're going to do with the rest of your mana. I think you can actually get this going really fast. And starting on turn 3 or 4, you have the potential to cast, 4 and 6 drop artifacts, even if you're doing it right, if you're drawing enough cards. Do note that this can trigger on your opponent's turn, too. And I think that's worth noting if you have instant speed card draw. So really freaking cool, dog. I think I don't know if this really makes the cut in standard, but again, it might have explosive enough starts to where it does. It absolutely could. And especially in a format like Commander where you get to brew around it and it's always your 1-drop, I think you can do some absolutely filthy things with this. So kind of a huge freaking fan. And if you have artifacts that draw cards, that is specifically very likely how you want to build your deck. Play Mind Stone. This can cast Mind Stone for free, and Mind Stone draws cards to put more counters on it. So again, stuff like that is probably what you want to be doing in Commander, and I think there's plenty of it to be doing. This is a fun looking Commander. We'll look at a card that I'm probably the most excited about today. This is my favorite card of the day. I don't think it's the best. There's at least two cards after this, but Goblin Shadow is my favorite. I love everything about it. 1 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your first main phase, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, this enchantment deals 1 damage to each opponent. So not only does this have landfall, ping for a damage. So it's an Iridescent Vine Lasher. It's a Sabatender. You know, we've got multiple creatures like this. We got Tanic and Edge of Eternities. I feel like in every freaking set, we get a creature with this landfall ability. And I do like that this is a lot less removable than, you know, the creature versions of that effect. But I think the really cool thing about this is the fact that whenever you play something from anywhere other than your hand, it deals the damage to each opponent. So again, we go to Commander and we look at stuff like, you know, Bolus's Citadel. In Limited, there's a combo that's going to be kind of tough to get, but you can get Gwenum, hit for combat damage with Gwenum, and then Gwenum just becomes a Bolus's Citadel. So suddenly Goblin Shadow just wins the game. Sort of, you know, you're probably paying more life to play stuff than they're taking from Goblin Shadow, but I still think it's a fun little combo, and it kind of works that way in Commander as well. I like that it hits each opponent in Commander. It needed to do that, you know. So just really, really cool. I think that there's a lot of combos with this, not just with impulse drawing and all the other stuff that lets you cast stuff from, you know, exile, and there's a lot, but there's plenty of stuff that lets you cast spells from your graveyard. Like some of the game changers in red are spells that let you cast, you know, Underworld Breach or whatever, are cards that let you cast spells from your graveyard. And Y'all Must Will obviously is a great card, and that lets you cast stuff from your graveyard. And now whenever you Y'all Must Will and cast something from your graveyard, deal damage to each opponent. It's nasty. Again, card off the top of your library that you can cast for whatever reason. You know, there's a lot of things that do that. Suddenly, 1 damage to each opponent. It's nasty. This could end up dealing so much damage before it's all said and done. And for what it's worth, the art is awesome too. So I like that. But this, again, is not only my favorite card of the day, it might be my favorite card from the set. Maybe this should have been number 1, but I also really like Strength of Will. Like a lot. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for an instant. Until end of turn, target creature you control gains indestructible, and whenever this creature is dealt damage, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Gross. That's really funny to me, man. Like, especially against red removal. Not only does it make sure the creature doesn't die, but now like your Tifa, you know, gets like 3 +1/+1 counters. It's so crazy. That is so crazy, man. Because, you know, Tifa especially likes to have her power increased, but it works with anything in very, very nice ways. You can just block up with your 2/2 on like a 6/6, and now suddenly your 2/2's an 8/8. It's so nasty, dude. Like, this is a really, really cool card, not just for Commander, but I do think for Standard. Not only the landfall decks are going to love this, but it's just a really good piece all when you put it all together. It's just a really good piece of cardboard, man, that probably, I think some people are going to read this and be like, oh, this could have been uncommon. And maybe it could have been, but I don't think it's going to feel like an uncommon a lot of the time when you play it. Not at all. We've got Spider Sense, everybody. We collectively all have Spider Sense. This is a wild magic card. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant with web slinging for a blue mana. Counter target instant spell, sorcery spell, or triggered ability for 1 mana. You have to have a tapped creature, which is easier said than done in blue decks, but it's not anywhere close to impossible. And there's already like standard decks like Simic or Ouroboros and stuff, Simic Landfall, that might want to play a card like this, again, to counter removal against their Tifas and whatnot. They have Lana Werewolves in that deck, so they can tap down a creature at will, you know. They don't have to be attacking. But even if they are attacking, they probably don't mind returning an attacking creature to their hand in order to save their most important creature. Countering triggered abilities is also a pretty big game because a lot of people rely on their ETB triggers and stuff like that, and being able to counter one for a single mana is great. This is especially good in, say, a Pixie deck kind of build thing. You know, I haven't really brought that deck up today, but, you know, Pixie stuff wants to return things to your hand, and this does that. This returns a Pixie to your hand, or an Ambrosia Whiteheart, or a Sunpearl Kieran, or like whatever you happen to be working with over there, Fear of Isolation. And you can play the creature again to bounce something else, and in the meantime, the between time, you countered an important spell or triggered abilities. So yeah, dude, this is going to be I think a very, very, very playable card, probably in multiple formats. We'll see about standard, but it's almost certainly commander playable because you should have creatures laying around. If nothing else, you've got your commander laying around a lot of the time. And I do think that in certain older formats, this is phenomenal. Anytime you see a 1-mana counterspell, almost no matter how limited it is, you have to understand that it's probably going to be playable. Aha, there is a brand new card as I've reloaded Mythic Spoiler here, and and I have no idea what it does. I have not read this card yet. I'm pretty sure it's existed for 5 seconds. We got to look at Hydro-Man, Fluid Felon. This is 2 blue for a 2/2 legendary elemental villain. Whenever you cast a blue spell, if Hydro-Man is a creature, he gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay. At the beginning of your end step, untap Hydro-Man. Until your next turn, he becomes a land and gains tap, add blue. Okay. So this is blue ramp. Whenever you cast a blue spell, he gets +1/+1 too. So kind of a pseudo prowess thing, because you're going to be casting like opt, sleight of hand into opt into. Well, you should probably do this in a different order, but you go like, you go like Storm Chaser's Talent into the Flood Maw, into opt, into sleight of hand, and now he's like a 6/6. That's not bad. He's vanilla apart from that, so it won't always be great, but it is noteworthy that you can attack with him. They block up or don't block or whatever, and then you start like chucking blue spells, so that's not bad. But yeah, the really interesting thing about this is that it's also a land. It's blue ramp. It's blue ramp. So like if I play this on turn 3, then during my opponent's turn, I will have 2 blue mana up. Or 2 mana. So does this seem crazy good to anybody else? I mean, usually you see lands that turn into dudes. This is a dude that turns into a land. That's just kind of different. So let me know how you felt about him and everything else down there in the comments. There's some good stuff today. These last like 4 or 5 cards, they all actually have a chance to do one thing or another in one environment or another, Spider-Man might not be like necessarily my cup of tea as far as like the property itself goes. I like it enough, I guess, but I'm not like fanatical about Spider-Man. But web slinging and especially Mayhem look like really cool mechanics that I kind of want to dig into a little bit. So I respect that about the set, and there are some good pieces. Like as soon as I get to play Shadow of the Goblin, playing it immediately. I can't wait to get my hands on that thing. But anyway, y'all, that's Itsky Lewitsky for this one. Just do all the YouTube stuff on your way out. Let me know how you felt about the things, thoughts, feelings, and emotions all rolled into one. You can even use anger. That's fine. This is a safe place. But apart from that, you can just like the video. That's a possibility. You could if you wanted to. It's the button shaped like a thumb, easy to find down there. Sub to the sandwich, trying to get to 150 subs. It's a lot of sandwiches, but we can eat them all together. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I also have a Patreon, just $1 a month to get in there, and I'm going to be real honest with y'all. Kind of need your help right about now. Patreon's really the only way I make real money on YouTube, and the only way I can keep doing this job. And I kind of serious, like hella need your help on Patreon right now. It's just $1 a month. If you've got it, I would appreciate it. And for that $1 a month, I will let you vote on stuff that we do around here, deck techs and other content like that. But pretty soon, I'm thinking of not necessarily entirely rehauling the Patreon, but at least giving people more and better things for their investment into the Patreon, like maybe early access. I'm doing some tweaks here. If you want to get on the ground floor of that, come on over to the Patreon. But anyway, I'm sorry I'm pitching it so hard. Let's be real with you. I need your help. But anyway, like I've said, I've taken too much of your time today. That was like a solid hour of cards to look at. I apologize. Not necessarily my fault, but I still apologize for being such a blabbermouth. I am Dev from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.